All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hello everyone, thanks for joining us this evening for our presentation workshop about networking and stats and data science. We're going to start off with introductions. So my name is Lisa Famularo. I work in the Center for Career Development here at UConn Stores. I have been in the office for about 7 years, started off as a grad student there and then became a full-time person. Currently, my focus areas are working with students in the physical life and behavioral sciences departments, which does include stats, math, biochem, physics, and like a lot of the similar majors as well as doing a lot of the equity and inclusion initiatives for our office. And I'm really excited that I have a co-presenter here with me today. So Claire, go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Thanks, Lisa. Hi, everyone. My name is Claire Wiedewell. I am a UConn grad. I graduated back in May of 2021 with a double major in math, stat, and economics. And I currently work as an underwriter at Aetna CVS Health Company and part of our underwriting leadership development program, which is a 4.5-year rotational program where I'm exposed to different areas within underwriting at Aetna, as well as some various early career professional development opportunities. I also worked in the Center for Career Development my senior year with Lisa as part of our CLAS Career Ambassador. So happy to be here and be able to present.
Yes, we're so happy to have you back. So throughout the presentation today, we're going to cover 4 main topics. I'm going to do my best to kind of move the virtual live stream components out of the way as much as I can, but we're going to start with talking about defining networking, formal definition, some of the common barriers and benefits to doing it. We're going to move into kind of how to leverage your existing network. Then the third part is going to be about growing your network. That's going to be kind of the bulk of today's presentation. And then lastly, we're going to end up talking about kind of what to say in networking conversations. We are more than happy to answer questions throughout the session. Like, you don't have to wait until the end to ask any questions that you have. If you're on the live stream, we do have the chat pulled up, so feel free to throw them in there. If you're in person, raise your hand, yell them out. We'll respond accordingly. So let's just go ahead and dive in. So defining networking. What you see on the screen here is the formal definition that the Center for Career Development uses to describe networking. And I think it's really important to start with this because networking is often portrayed as a very intense kind of formal process, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So the definition reads, the process of building up and maintaining informal relationships, especially with people whose friendships could bring advantages such as a job or a business opportunity. Networking is often portrayed to be very formal, but it does not have to be. So I think one of the key phrases in here is building up and maintaining informal relationships. So again, it doesn't have to be like, formally having a mentor or, a relationship that you have with someone that's like documented in some way. It can be really casual and really informal and still be really beneficial. So that's kind of setting the tone for the conversation for today. So in terms of I mentioned a few seconds ago, a lot of people kind of avoid networking because it's often portrayed as like this formal, a little bit scary kind of thing. So I want to address 3 of the barriers really quick. And I also want to have Claire jump in on how she has maybe seen or experienced these barriers. So first off, lack of confidence. When approaching networking, a lot of people have struggled to articulate their value and don't really want to because it feels like you're kind of bragging and it just can feel uncomfortable sometimes. So that kind of relates to the second barrier, which is an aversion to selling. Sometimes networking is portrayed as like selling yourself to someone else, whether it's an employer or like a potential connection. And that is also something that people find very uncomfortable. And then third, it's a big time commitment. Not only identifying people to network with, but then also actually building and maintaining those relationships can take a lot of time. And it's something that not everybody has the time to do or wants to dedicate the time to do. So these are some of the really common reasons why people don't network. I imagine some of you in the room have thought about these things at one point or another, and feel free to jump in on what you think.
Yeah, I know. Definitely being early in career, or even when I was in your seat 2 years ago as an undergrad, I definitely felt like I lacked the confidence to network, especially just because you don't really have the experience. So you might be going to a networking event with people who have 10, 20, 30 years of experience, and you just don't feel compatible, and like you don't feel like you can bring something to that conversation, and you feel like you're just not as experienced, and it can be very intimidating and overwhelming. So something I'd like to just change my mentality and think that you're giving to them too, and having that I think is really helpful. It's a two-way conversation. They wouldn't be talking to you if they were interested, so just kind of helping with that mentality I think helps with that confidence.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I really like that you brought up like the two-way component of networking, because it is two-way. Like,
Yeah.
no matter if you feel like it or not, the people who you're networking with are also learning something from you. Like, they're learning, what it's like to enter the field, or what are some common concerns of new professionals. And that's not necessarily something they would know without talking to you. So even if it's just as basic as that, it's definitely mutually beneficial. And speaking of benefits, that's what we want to talk about next. So some of the top benefits of networking, first and foremost, is just having a broader presence. So the more you network, the more people know who you are, the more people who can kind of look out for opportunities for you, and just kind of like the more your name is circulating so that it can be tied to opportunities that might come up. Next, we have access. So going along with the presence, if you have a larger presence in your field or in your industry, you will have access to more opportunities that you may not have had access to otherwise. So that's obviously a benefit as well. You will collect a lot of advice along the way. So networking isn't necessarily the best place to find factual information all the time, because it does tend to rely on a lot of opinion, and because of that you're going to get a lot of advice along the way from a lot of different people, different perspectives. Along with that, you're going to learn a lot, not just about the topics that you're networking with, but also about yourself throughout the networking process, in terms of like how you get along with or don't get along with the people who you're networking with. And then, like Claire just mentioned, there is a confidence boost that comes with networking, that the more you practice, the more comfortable it becomes. And then last but not least, networking, of course, has professional benefits, but it can have some personal benefits as well. So I've heard countless stories of people who have networked, and those people that they've networked with have become really good friends of theirs, and benefited them in ways other than just like getting a job or getting a business opportunity. So these are some of the reasons, if you're not already convinced, that networking can be really beneficial. So again, want to turn it over to you, and if you can share like one or two times where you have experienced one of these or multiple of these, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced like all of these and all the networking I've done. So something I do in part of my role is called skip level. So every month I'll meet with like a senior leader or director, someone like pretty high up, and I'll just have like a 30-minute conversation with them and having that network. And I've just been able to, I guess the purpose of it is just to learn more about underwriting overall in my program at Aetna. And I've just been able to expand my knowledge outside of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, because there's just so much to learn in any type of business that you're not going to get to experience it all. So having that like offhand experience talking to all of these directors and leaders is definitely something that you're going to learn. Same with advice. I always ask at the end of a conversation, do you just have any general advice? Because a lot of these people, like I said earlier, they have 20, 30 years experience. So they've obviously been in your shoes. They've been early in the career. They've had all these challenges. So they're a really great resource, not just for your industry, but for your overall development. I'll give another example. While I was at UConn, I was part of SAA, which is Student Alumni Association. And my junior year, I went to a networking event, which was more geared toward the medical side, which I'm not anything to do with medical. I was more math stat. So I attended just because they recommended it too, but I kind of wasn't expecting to learn much. But hearing the presentation, hearing their challenges was something I wasn't really expecting, because I thought everything was going to be very medical, science-based, but just hearing those challenges, they're very transferable to every business, to every segment. So that was something I honestly wasn't expecting to get out of that event, but talking with the speaker afterwards was something, learning, hearing, and seeing those challenges was really inspiring and helped, and it was something I just wasn't expecting.
Yeah, networking doesn't always happen in expected ways. So that's a good story for sure. And I appreciate that you took that initiative to engage in a networking opportunity you weren't 100% sure would be relevant to you, and you still benefited from it anyway. Yeah. So to close out this kind of initial section, I do have a few key data points to share just about some of the research that's been done on the topic of networking and how it can be beneficial. So first and foremost, there's a stat that circulates that around 70% of job openings are never posted publicly. So when you think about the different ways that people get job opportunities, I'm actually just going to put the next one up because it's related. About 80% of them are filled through a networking opportunity. So whether or not they're posted, knowing someone that has a connection to that opportunity can be incredibly beneficial. And one of the terms that's kind of associated with this data point is called the hidden job market. So essentially what that means is that if you were to Google how many jobs are open in the US as of today, you'll get a number of how many postings there are on the internet, but there are actually more jobs than that open. Some of them just aren't being shared with the public. They're being filled through back channels. So talking about presence, access, getting your name out there, that's going to allow you to access this 70 to 80% of jobs that never make it to that public facing world. And then the other key points one of the key points that's related is 40% of hires are the result of an employee referral. So even if a current employee at an organization, so let's say Claire knew someone that she thought would be a really good fit to work at an RCVS, that carries even more weight than kind of just general networking connections. So in terms of how you allocate your energy and efforts in networking, it can be really helpful to do so in a targeted strategic way, so that if you have a dream company, put your efforts towards that company, but also you can still touch on that 70-80% if you just kind of network broadly. Any thoughts on those topics?
I know I told Lisa this earlier, but I actually help with some of the recruitment and hiring at non-CVS for our early underwriting careers, and we have had experiences where I'm reviewing a hire view interview and I've got an email saying this person was referred, can you pay a little bit more attention? Can you do it a little faster than normal? So they do emphasize those referrals a little bit. I mean, obviously I can't speak for every company, but I know that is definitely something that a lot of companies probably do though.
Yeah. Yeah, and it definitely varies from company to company, but I think this is living proof that it happens based on Claire's experience. Yeah. So hope from these first few slides, you're kind of on board that networking is really important and you want to maybe do more of it. That's probably why you're here. So want to dive into a little bit about your existing network. And one of the initial points that I want to make here is that everyone has an existing network. You know people. Whether or not you would consider them professional connections doesn't matter. You have a network. And another data point that I think is really fun to share is the average number of people that an individual person knows. I actually just found out about this data point recently, and I expected it to be kind of low. I was thinking maybe 100, 150, 200, in terms of knowing them for real. But actually, according to the studies that have been done on this topic, it's 611. And then I started thinking about it and I was like, okay, well, if I incorporate all of my family, all of my friends, all of my friends' family that I know, all of my interns, my former interns, my coworkers, it adds up pretty quickly. So if you just take a moment and do a quick inventory of how many people you know, I hope that you realize that it could be as high as 611. Of course, this is an average, so could be more, could be less, but I think 611 is a pretty solid number. Did you know that this was 611?
I did not, but that is surprising.
Yeah. I agree. So in terms of like who makes up your existing network, I already gave some examples, but want to give some more as well. It can be anyone from friends, family, people in your classes who you might not consider your friends, but who you like know and could have a conversation with. Former teachers or supervisors, current teachers or supervisors, any coworkers in jobs that you've had, whether they're kind of career-oriented jobs or not, again, doesn't matter. Family, friends, neighbors, anyone who you know and interact with on, I would say, I'm going to use the word regular, but very lightly, like a regular basis in terms of like you didn't just meet them one time and then move on. I would say that those are all the people that kind of make up your existing network. And I do want to emphasize another point that Claire made earlier. Your existing network may not be in your industry or your desired career path, but that's okay because you never know who they know. So for example, the medical panel that Claire talked about, like maybe one of the panelists on there is married to the lead underwriter at Aetna. And like that could be a really good connection for Claire that she never would have stepped into unless she went to that panel and talked to that person in like the medical field. So you have a really big existing network and the people don't necessarily have to be in your specific industry. How do you use your existing network? Well, two specific recommendations that I would like to give. The first and probably easiest thing that you can do is to keep them informed. So if you are at a point in your career where you are looking to either make a decision or like take a certain action, it's good to let your network know that. So whether it's, again, like looking for an internship, looking for a job, trying to get into grad school, choosing your career path, the more people you talk to about that, the better. Letting your aunt and uncle know that you're looking for an internship, they might not be able to do anything about it, but maybe when they go to their local town council meeting, because they're involved in local politics, they meet somebody who has an internship and they can refer you to it. So just like the example I gave previously, this is a good way to just like increase your presence, get the word out there, and leverage like the second and third degree connections even, so the people you're not directly connected to hopefully kind of benefit you in the long run. Have you ever had an experience where something like this has happened to you?
I've definitely like seen lots of posts like on LinkedIn of people.
Yeah.
Like if you ever look on LinkedIn, people say that they're hiring or they're looking for work, you'll see so many people like connecting with that. I haven't personally had that experience because I got my job right out of college, but I definitely know I know Lisa just mentioned leveraging your own network for those second and thirds. Like I've met so many people through my connections, so definitely think putting yourself out there, that's how you can kind of increase your network even more.
Yeah. One final example I'll give on that note is I actually just found out that one of our current interns is going into a rotational program at Aetna, and I was like, oh my gosh, I know someone who is doing that right now. So I haven't yet. I just found out yesterday, but I'm going to ultimately connect them with Claire. So Claire can be a part of that students network. The second thing, kind of taking this one step further, is you don't necessarily have to wait for your network to support you in this way. You can ask for it. So if you know that like your friend's dad is in the field that you want to pursue, ask your friend to make an introduction. Or maybe it's on LinkedIn, like maybe I see that Claire is connected to another alum who I really want to come speak at a future event. I might say, hey, Claire, can you introduce me to this person so that we can build that network. So don't be afraid to like set specific goals and make those requests, because that can facilitate this relationship building even faster. One of the really common questions I get about like your existing network is like, what's the strategy here? How do I keep track of everything that I have going on within my network? And I have to say that there's no like right way to do this, but you should come up with like some sort of system that works for you, because otherwise it can be really hard to keep track of like all the outreach you've done over, 5 to 10 years of your life, and then go back to those people at the times where they might be especially beneficial to you. So one strategy that a lot of actually students have shared with me that tends to work really well is creating like some form of a spreadsheet to do this. So this is just an example of what that might look like, where on the left-hand side, you can put names. On the right-hand side, you can talk about like how you met this person or like how you know this person. I've seen some people also even have additional columns to indicate like when they last reached out to them and like what their talking points were, or even just like some personal details about that person that they think would be good to like remember in the future. Again, not required, but one option. Some people use LinkedIn, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Some people have like a segmented system that they use. It really, really varies. It's just something that is going to work for you personally. How do you keep track of your networking connections?
I have a OneNote on my computer with a giant list of everyone that I've talked to, especially with those monthly networking meetings that I have. And every time, like I'll be talking to someone from like Stop Loss, and every time I start working with that segment, I will reach out and say, hey, I'm working with your segment. And it's just a great way to kind of keep connected with them. Is every time I'm kind of like interacting near them, I can just kind of say hey, even if it's not like something formal. I don't have to set up a whole nother meeting, but even just saying that like, hello, I'm like working with you soon. Like I think that kind of keeps that connection going, and that list really helps keep track of everything.
I'm sure. What do you put on the list other than their name, if anything?
I'll put like where they're like the segment that they're in, and I put some notes from like what we talked about, because I know like one person I talked to, she said she was going to be working for like 40 years and she started before there were even computers. So like having those little tidbits and facts, it's like you can kind of recall them and bring them back to the future conversations.
Yeah, stuff like that's really good to bring back up, because that shows that you're like listening and you really remember some details that like can feel irrelevant in the moment, but then could be really good foundations for future. Cool. Thanks for sharing that example. All right, so that's kind of it on the existing network piece. You can tap in. The great thing about your existing network is that you can tap into it anytime. But I know that a lot of people, especially who are in college, are really looking to grow their network in the field or in the industry that they're hoping to pursue. So that is, like I said, what we're going to spend a pretty big chunk of time talking about, some strategies on how to do that. And we're going to cover both in-person and virtual ways to do so. So I think in-person is first. Oh no, I have a quote first. This is a wonderful quote from Bill Nye. Everyone you will ever meet knows something you don't, which I thought was a really good like contextual just message for this growing your network piece, that I think connects back to what we were talking about earlier about, even if they're not in your industry, they can be a good connection. So now we have in person. So there are a lot of different ways to expand your network in person. We're going to focus on 6 of them today, and those include events, conferences, career fairs, classes, clubs, and everyday life. And we are going to go into more depth about each of these things on the next slides. So getting started. The University of Connecticut hosts a ton of events, and almost any event that you attend here as a student can be considered a networking event. So if you look at the leftmost screenshots on this slide, those are 2 events that my office, the Center for Career Development, is hosting in the coming week. Yep, they're both on March 7th. So the first one is it's called Career Tuesday. Every Tuesday, we bring a different employer to campus to talk about their experiences and opportunities. And any student who's interested can go network with that employer. So this coming Tuesday, we have Fastenal Company coming from 10:30 to 2. They'll be in the School of Business atrium. You don't have to be a school of business student to attend, but if that's a company you're interested in, check it out. Also in the evening on Tuesday, we have our biannual CLAS Career Night, where we're going to be focusing on careers in like research. So if you want to do research as part of your future career, we're going to have 11 alum who are currently doing that, like come back and share their experiences and share their advice. So that's something that you could attend as well. If you look at the top 2 screenshots On the right side, those are both events that I just pulled from like the UConn calendar. So one of them is a stats colloquium that it says on the towards the bottom that the topic is identifiable deep generative models via sparse decoding. So if that has any interest to you, you might want to go and meet that person or meet the other people who are attending that session because they might have a shared interest. On the right, we have introduction to machine learning Skillshare. So if machine learning is at all of interest to you, maybe that's something that you want to attend, again, and connect with the instructor or connect with the other people. And then even outside of UConn, I know it can sometimes be hard to get to like in-person events when like you're on campus during the semester, but there are some that are happening. So one example that I pulled actually from the American Statistical Association website is a workshop happening at, I believe it was at Princeton University. It says it in there in the first sentence about statistical foundations of data science and their applications. So if you really want to go to some of these like in-person networking events that Claire was mentioning earlier, they are available. I pulled all of these events in probably the span of like 5 minutes to include as examples here. So the reason I share that is to just show that like there are a lot of them. And it wasn't even hard for me to find ones that would be relevant for like stats and data science. So if you're looking for these opportunities, they are certainly available. I know that the Student Alumni Association is an example of a student org that hosts those kinds of events, which I know we have a slide about later, but there are lots of different campus entities or like local groups that do these events as well. Do you have any tips on like where else to find networking events that could be attended?
I would just suggest like just doing a simple Google search. I'm sure there's probably things online, or if you go on LinkedIn, I know they have like a lot of virtual like classes and things, so you could probably connect with the speaker afterwards too. But yeah, I think the organizations at UConn and have like a ton of, they bring in like lots of different businesses, so you could probably hear from those as well.
Yeah, and then in terms of like how to actually make the most of these sorts of opportunities, I would say that just being engaged is really the best that you can do. So go to either, if it's a formal networking event, go to the networking event. If it's more of like a workshop or presentation, go there and like pay attention, ask questions, talk to the speaker afterwards. Maybe like when you get there, try to introduce yourself to a few people who are in the room. The more proactive you are, the more you're going to get out of that experience. But if it's your first networking event, you could maybe take it a little bit easier and then at the next one go a little bit harder. Up to you to kind of ease yourself in or approach them the way that you would like. But I think the kind of the key point here is that there are lots of in-person events that are available as a student, and it's never too early to start taking advantage of these in-person events. I know you mentioned earlier that you have been to in-person networking events before. Any other tips on like how to navigate them?
I would say be prepared. Just go like knowing, like have a goal kind of in mind. Do you want to learn? Do you want to meet new people? Do you want to ask questions? Do you want to learn about the business, the speaker? I would just say having that goal just kind of sets you up better to learn more of what you want and you kind of get the most out of that event.
I think that's good advice. So similar to just kind of events in general, there are also conferences. These are more like formalized opportunities to network and to share information with people who have like a common interest. So once again, pulled some screenshots, some examples to share with all of you. So over on the left-hand side, you can see that the top one there is taking place in Toronto in August. It's JSM 2023, which stands for the Joint Statistical Meeting, which is an organization that focuses on all different types of stats. Below that, there's a conference that's specifically for women in statistics and data science. I pulled that one to show that like there are events and conferences specifically for like certain affinity groups as well, in addition to like industry and career interests. That one's in Washington in October, so those are some that you'd probably have to travel for. But there are also local ones as well. So the one in the middle on the top is one that happens at UConn every summer. It's a statistics or a biopharmaceutical conference, focuses on like biostatistics. There's also the one in the middle on the bottom, which takes place at the University of San Francisco, which is geared towards college students. It's, a data science conference. And then over on the right-hand side, there's the New England Statistics Symposium at Boston University. So that's another like local one, not exactly on campus, but another kind of New England opportunity to connect and meet people. And I think one of the really nice benefits of conferences is that people go to conferences with the intention of networking. So it's not like you're going to have to like awkwardly make networking happen. It's going to happen because that's why people are there, to exchange like, or to build relationships, and then also to exchange information. I've been to a lot of conferences in my life. I think that they're really beneficial. Have you been to any conferences?
I've been to like a virtual one.
Okay.
So CVS has like colleague resource groups, which are kind of like those affinity groups.
Yeah.
So I'm a part of like the WISE one, so Women in STEM. And we did have like a virtual one. We did do breakout rooms. So I was able to kind of go in a breakout room with 3 people, and we just kind of talked. And it was really great too, because when you have like things like that, you come from like such wide variety backgrounds. So I got to learn a lot and meet some people that probably wouldn't have outside of that event.
Yeah, that's true. Conferences, you meet like a really big variety of people that you might not have met otherwise. And virtual conferences are great too. I have some examples of those later. They're just different than in-person conferences. In-person conferences have a few added elements in the sense of like, there might be like a meal where you can also network instead of just the sessions, or you might be able to like walk to another session with somebody and chat during that time, and that downtime doesn't really exist in the virtual space. But again, totally up to your preference, depends on the topic of the conference, the date, the location, all those sorts of things. But these are actual like real ones that are coming up if you're interested in any of these. Okay, career fairs. So again, in terms of like formalized opportunities, this is another one where employers are specifically telling you as attendees that they are hiring and they're looking for people to build relationships with. 2 on the left are both UConn career fairs. So we have the Stores career fair on March 28th, and then also the Stanford career fair on March 8th, which is next week. I almost thought it was this week, but it's not. If you're interested in like a career in the Stanford area, might be worth taking a trip down to the Stanford campus for that. Both fairs will have over 100 employers who are coming to actively hire. And just like conferences, they are expecting you to come up to them and try to have conversations to build relationships. These screenshots are both from Handshake, which is where the fairs are listed. And if you go on to Handshake, you can actually see a list of the employers that are coming, so you can prepare ahead of time and not be just like surprised when you get there about who is coming. On the right-hand side is an example of a non-UConn career fair, but one that is still an in-person career fair that you can still attend. This one is called the Hartford Sports and Entertainment Career Fair. So if you're looking for more of like the sports side of statistics or data science, might be some really cool opportunities there for you to consider. That's on May 31st, so it's not for a little while, but it does look like, based on the image, that like the yard goats will be there, and I probably can't even tell you what all of those icons are for. I think it's a lot of like local sports organizations. So if you're looking to go into like major leagues, maybe not, but just want to pull that as an example of a in-person career fair that you could attend. Have you ever been to our in-person career fairs?
I went to the actuarial one.
Okay.
Freshman year. That was it.
Okay.
Person.
How was that event for you?
I'll admit, it's kind of overwhelming. Just
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, a lot of like booths, and you kind of go. Sometimes you have to wait a little bit. And being a freshman with no experience, I was like, I don't know if they're even gonna want me. So it was definitely overwhelming. But I think if you kind of prepare yourself, practice what you want to say to people, have your resume all ready, kind of again, do your research about who's going to be there. I think that definitely helps a lot.
Agreed. And even if you don't end up getting like a job or internship offer, still knowing the people who you talk to there and having their contact info, maybe connecting with them on LinkedIn, is a way to grow your network, even if it's not a way to get an opportunity, which might benefit you in the future. So always a productive experience. So then we did group together the last kind of set of in-person opportunities, those being classes, clubs, and everyday life. So we've said this a couple times already, but every time you meet someone new, that can turn into a networking opportunity. So some more specific examples of that are make an effort to build relationships with faculty members that are teaching your courses, classmates, club members, and guest speakers who come into your courses each semester. The more you take advantage of these kind of like relationships that you have to kind of build anyway, the more beneficial they can be in the future. So like if you're, for example, in a class that's this size and there's like 200 students in it, but you are the only student who stays after class and talks to your professor, when that professor is looking for someone to join their research lab, your name is probably going to come up more readily than the other 199 students who are in the course. So that type of networking can be really, really helpful. Same with a guest speaker. Like if you have, if your professor ever brings in a guest speaker, or like you go to a club meeting where they bring in guest speakers, that can be a way to network as well. Join clubs that feature guest speakers. Clubs can bring in speakers for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's to host just like talks. Other times it's to like actually teach a skill. It really varies. But I know two clubs that are really kind of known for this are the Data Science Club and the Math Club. There are a ton more, but those are just two examples that I would throw out there. And then look for networking opportunities in uncommon places as well. Like maybe the person sitting next to you on the bus, if they're, if they've got something with them, or they're reading something that indicates to you that they may be a good person for you to connect with, to go for it, take advantage of that. At a restaurant, at the barbershop, like literally wherever you go and spend your time, there could be possible networking connections. I have a story that I can share of a time where something like this happened to me. Have you like had that happen?
I mean, throughout so many classes, I'll just sit next to someone and then you start talking and then they're added to your network. And like, I have so many people on LinkedIn, I probably like from just random interactions, and we're like, oh, let's connect. So
yeah, that is definitely a good way to do it consistently, like anytime you have that opportunity. The story that I will share is one time I was going to a conference that was being kind of like led by this one specific presenter or like instructor. And it just so happened that we were on the same flight to get to the conference. So I was sitting in the aisle seat, they were sitting in the window seat, and I could see from like 2 seats down that they had like the conference handbook out in front of them. And I was like, no way, like what are the chances that this person is going to the same conference? So when the middle person like got up at one point, I said hi and I introduced myself, and turns out that they were this presenter. So I got to have this like hour-long conversation with the presenter on the plane on my way to this conference, and I got kind of like special treatment at this conference where they were there to educate, thousands of people. But because I took the time to make that introduction, I didn't have my conference workbook out, so they didn't know that I was going to the conference as well. It really benefited me, and I learned a lot from that person, and we are still connected. And I literally couldn't believe it. I looked over and I was like, no way. But it worked out. So I've heard a million stories like that, and you just kind of have to be willing to take advantage of those opportunities. All right, so let's hop into some virtual options as well, because in the COVID era, this is becoming more and more popular. So once again, we're going to cover 6. First being events and career fairs, similar to in-person, but want to highlight a few virtual options as well. Forums, Handshake, Husky Link, LinkedIn, and InterStride. The last 4 of these are actual like virtual platforms that we're going to demo, but the first 2 are not, so we will start with those. So again, have some screenshots here of virtual events and career fairs that could be really good networking opportunities. On the left, the 3 in the middle, so the Data Innovators Conference, the Analytics in 15, and the Career Connections Expo, those are all taken from LinkedIn. Those are all screenshots from LinkedIn. One of them's a conference, one of them is just like big meeting, and one of them is specifically like a career expo, which I would call a career fair, kind of like same name. But like Claire mentioned earlier, LinkedIn has an events feature where you could find all of these opportunities to join, and they're virtual. So rather than like, you know, finding transportation, getting to a specific location and engaging that way, you can do it online. The bottom left screenshot is taken from a website called Career Eco. They have a lot of career fairs that they host on that website, and they have one coming up that's specifically for actuarial and data science. So that could be interesting to look into. And then over on the right-hand side, those are UConn specific opportunities. So the first two are from Handshake. Again, we have a company who's coming to visit or to virtually engage with UConn students. And then we also have the CDC is doing like a spotlight series, they're calling it, on different professions within the CDC. And they're doing one in at the end of March on a data scientist that works there. And then in the bottom right, I know it's kind of covered for those of you in the room, but it is a virtual info session for one of the master's programs at UConn. So if you are looking to kind of connect with people who are in a current master's program and want some information about that, that can be a good way to find it. And I know the description is covered, but it actually says in there, network with current students in this program. So that's a good opportunity as well. I know you talked about your virtual networking conference earlier. Anything else that you would advise when it comes to virtual events?
Actually, so I know at least CVS does this. We have like coffee chats where we talk to interested like students or anyone that's interested in a position. So like if you are interested in a specific company, like do your research, they might be holding an event like that. So with that, you can kind of just talk one-on-one in like a 15-minute chat session with an actual employee. So like things like that are really helpful too. And again, just come prepared with questions or anything. And that's a really great way to kind of look into positions, but also like network again.
Yeah, that's a good tip. I did not know that. How do you know like where those are publicized?
I do not, but I think like if you like go on and sign up for like job info, I think they send out the email. The platform we use is Brazen, BRAZEN, so you could probably maybe look that up, and they might have like other companies as well, but we do use that a lot. At least CVS does. So
yeah, that's a really good tip. That's something that I wasn't aware of, because I mostly use LinkedIn, Handshake, UConn Event Calendar, and Career Eco to find these events, but there are a lot of others as well. I would even say just like general event platforms like Eventbrite and Meetup and like those sorts of platforms probably have virtual networking events as well. All right, and then this next one is a little bit more unique, but something that is common in kind of like the industries of stats and data science is networking through an online forum. So there are lots of these, but these are some of the ones that are like the most, I guess, well known. So GitHub, Stack Exchange, and then Posit community, which is actually the newly renamed community that's associated with R. These are all websites where you can go on and either share some of the work that you're doing in like coding or like technical writing of some kind, and or interact with that of other people. So you can like comment, ask questions, use their code or whatever, download it. So if you are interested in a field that has this like coding or technical writing component to it, these are places where you might want to start to like establish a presence if you're not already on them. And this could be another way to virtually meet people who have like similar interests or similar skill sets. Or maybe you can find someone who has a skill set that like you're looking to develop, and you can connect with them like in that capacity. I personally am not like in this field, so I don't have an account on any of these sites, but I have worked with students on thinking about ways to like if they do kind of market that to employers or other people, and that's definitely something that I would recommend, like having it on your resume, having it on LinkedIn, and that's something that we could talk more about in like a coaching appointment with the center. I'm gonna guess that you are not on these websites either.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, okay. That's totally fine, but I do know that some people would be impressed by you having a presence on these platforms. All right. So, like I said earlier, the next like 4 platforms are like websites that we actually do want to show you and do demos of. I'm just going to name them really quick and then minimize PowerPoint so I can get over to them. But first is Handshake. It's a Yukon specific platform. It's a web-based recruiting system that where employers will post jobs and internships. It's also where our event calendar is located, and then also it's where you can schedule career coaching appointments with our office. So want to specifically show you the like employer networking feature on there. We also have Husky Link, which is UConn's alumni mentoring platform. So if you're looking specifically to network with UConn alumni, this is where you can do that. LinkedIn, we've mentioned it already many times, but formally it's the world's largest professional network on the internet, has lots of features, including searching for jobs and internships, connecting and strengthening professional relationships, and there's also like a learning component that Claire was mentioning earlier. The UConn Statistics does have a page on LinkedIn, so we'll be sure to check that out. And then I'm also going to really quickly just point out something called InnerStride, which is a new networking platform that's specifically designed for international students. So if you're an international student, it's a great resource for you to check out. So while I pull these up, I'm actually going to ask Claire, I'll let you choose between Handshake or LinkedIn, but give kind of like your spiel of those platforms and what you think, how you think they're beneficial.
Yeah, so Handshake was super beneficial to me when I was an undergrad. That's how I found all 3 of my internships, and which eventually led me into my full-time job. So that job search feature is really helpful. Like I said, I got all my positions through that. You also are able to connect with a lot of different employers. They'll send you like messages and you can respond back, and then you can also, like Lisa's going to show, find those employers to reach out to. So definitely helpful for your undergrad. I know too, like in CVS, part of our recruitment, we've actually reached out to students through Handshake. So maybe you've gotten a message from me.
So you're on Handshake on the employer end now?
Yes.
Cool. I didn't know that, but that's fun. So I'll quickly show the features that I would say are some of the top networking features, but then if you also have other ones, would love to have you jump in. So this is what Handshake looks like when you log in. Many of you have probably at least logged in once before, but the first tab over here on the left-hand side is the Jobs tab, and this is where, no surprise, you can look for jobs and also internships. So you can come up here and apply any of these filters. By like opportunity type, you can do it by location, whether it's on-site or remote, and then there's other filters as well, like is it paid or unpaid, what industry is it in, etc. Lots of different options here. One filter that I do want to point out is this employer contacts filter, because if you check this box, you will only be showed or displayed positions where employers have kind of like checked a box that says, please allow students to message me about this opportunity. So if I click show results, and let's say you're interested in this research assistant at Yale position, if you scroll down, you can see right here, there's this box that allows you to directly message the person who is like responsible for managing this position. This is a feature that Handshake introduced maybe a year ago. I would say a little bit less than that, but it's awesome because you can just directly contact people. They're like asking for it. So definitely something to take advantage of. If you want to see our event schedule, you can do that here in the events tab. You can filter it again by a lot of different things. So by the category of the event, maybe career fair, networking, employer info session, etc. You can choose in-person versus virtual. You can pick the date. If you want to see if a specific company is hosting an event, you can do that. So this page is pretty self-explanatory. But one of the pages that I think is like the most underutilized here in Handshake is this employers page. So we have, you can see the number here, over 830,000 employers who have expressed interest in UConn through Handshake. It doesn't necessarily mean that every single one of those employers is like actively hiring right now, but at some point they have, you know, connected with us on Handshake. And just like all the other pages, you can use these filters and say, okay, I want to see companies that are specifically in Connecticut. You would think that it would know that I want Connecticut at this point because I've typed it in so many times, but it's not going to work for me right now. Okay, fine. But I want companies maybe in the internet and software field. So I'm going to filter that down to 34,000. And then let's say, I don't know, this company seems really interesting to me, located in LA. I can go to this page and see more about the company. This particular company does not have a great profile. Unfortunately, there's like not a lot of information here, but they do have some contact info here, so you can get in touch with them. And then many companies will also have this section filled out down here on the bottom called a public staff list. So you can actually like see who works at that company, who's responsible for like recruiting college students or interacting with college students, and then reach out that way. Let me go back and try to find an employer who has a better profile to show you really quick. It's all these companies with the quotation marks are coming up. Let's just try another one. So they don't have a public staff list, but they do have an email of a specific person listed here. And then they also have had a number of students like intern with them before, who those students have like told Handshake that they've gotten those internships. So another networking opportunity is you can get in touch with those students and like maybe ask them about their experiences. You can, the message button is literally right here. And you can also, if you want to learn more about them before messaging them, you can go and like look at their profile as well. So this is a student at University of Colorado, and you can see like what they've done. So I think it's a really cool way to network with employers who are like specifically connected to UConn. Are there any other ways that you use Handshake that you would point out?
I think you covered a lot of them.
Yeah.
Like as an employer, again, we'll just like reach out. So there's
Messages.
that, again, that two-way street. So you can feel free to message them, and they also might message you, which is take advantage of that as well.
Yes, and I didn't point out the messages feature, but that your inbox up here in the top right is where you will have like all your messages from employers. So I have like a fake student account on Handshake so that I can like show students what it looks like I'm doing right now. So I do get messages from employers sometimes based on my really well filled out profile. So this is what that might look like. And literally they're just messaging me and saying, you know, we have these opportunities. This person is the assistant director of talent acquisition at this company, and they noticed that I'm a psych major according to my profile, and they're telling me about that they're coming to campus for an upcoming career fair, and they wanted me to know that. So it's a good way to make connections. Any questions about Handshake or any of these features that we've showed before we move on to the next platform? All right. If there are no questions, we will move on to resource number 2, which is Husky Link. So as I mentioned earlier, that is the alumni mentoring platform that UConn has available. And the easiest way to get to it is if you go to the homepage of our website, career.uconn.edu, and then I'll zoom in a little bit. Right up here in the top right corner, we have a shortcut that takes you right there. You can click on Husky Link. And then right here, it kind of explains to you what Husky Link is, and then it includes the student login, which as usual is connected to your single sign-on. It's going to take a second to load. There we go. So when you log into Husky Link, this is what it's going to look like. This homepage, honestly, is not that impressive, but the piece where a lot of the networking takes place is under this Connect tab. So if you go to Connect and then you click on Community, this is where you can see all of those alumni that I mentioned who are like signed up for this networking platform and willing and interested to talk to current students. So if you look at this, you can see that As of right now, we have 679 active users. People who are like literally on the website right now, there are 28 of them. So that can influence like who you reach out to. You can also in here like use the filters that are up here at the top. So you can filter by industry, topic of conversation, hobbies. There's a lot of different options there. And you can also take like a little quiz about like what kind of people you are looking to connect with. And then they will recommend people like you see here for you based on like your own interests. And then let's say Abigail here is someone who I would be really interested in learning more about. I can go to Abigail's profile and learn more about them. So I can see their past experiences, their current experiences. I can also see up here that we have one thing in common, which is we both graduated in 2018. So that might be a good talking point for me to like initiate my conversation. And then I can just send a message directly right here. So it's a really, really easy platform to navigate. And I can't stress enough that like these people have specifically like gone out of their way to sign up for this platform. So they want to talk, they want to network, they want to give their advice. So it's a little bit of a easier way to reach out to someone because the likelihood that they're going to respond is pretty high in comparison to just kind of like cold reaching out to someone in another capacity. Yeah, I think those are most of the features. Claire, you were here in the Husky Mentor Network days, right? Yeah. So this resource used to be called the Husky Mentor Network. Do you remember ever like marketing that platform or engaging with it in any way?
I wasn't the biggest user on it, but I did just create an account. So I'm like learning it now, and it seems pretty like, I mean, if I was a student, still like I wish I kind of took more advantage of it. It's just a really great way because these people are all alumni. They've been in your shoes, so they obviously know something, so they could probably help you in any way that you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you now have an account on here. All right, so now if you want to connect with Claire, this is a way that you can do it in addition to many other statistics alum or math alum, depending on what your major is. So that's a resource that you should definitely all check out. Any questions about Husky Link? No? Okay. This is a newer resource. We did just launch it in January, so it's growing. So right now we have 679 alum. That number will get a lot bigger. Okay, so number 3 of our online resources is LinkedIn. This is one of my personal favorites. I could talk about LinkedIn for so long, but I'm actually going to let you start on this one, Claire. What are some of like your favorite features of LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is really great because I think it's like the social media for business. I'll be honest, when I was in undergrad, I was more of a handshake person, but then when I got my internship at Aetna, I actually really started going on LinkedIn. I remember getting like 30 connections. I'm like, wow, I'm so popular. Now I have like over 300. But like everyone uses LinkedIn, I feel like, in my business and a lot of places. So I think it's a really great way to connect with people, and even people maybe you haven't talked to in a while. It's just a way to keep in touch. They might post an update and you can kind of comment on it, say like, congratulations on your promotion or your new job. So I think that like aspect is really great. Again, the messaging, I've talked to a lot of people on LinkedIn, people I haven't like physically met or I don't work with. I'm still able to kind of connect because I see that they're connected to some other people. So again, building off my like second and third connections. But I don't know, LinkedIn's really great, and I highly recommend building up your profile if you haven't already done so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually a really good just like screen to start or to share first. When you first create a LinkedIn account, it will prompt you through like a couple of questions to like fill out your profile, but not many. So before you like dive into LinkedIn and build 300 connections, you should definitely create like a strong profile first. So if you have any like questions or want some support in creating a profile, that's something that our office can support you with. But just to show you quickly, you know, a profile is going to be very similar to any other kind of social media profile you have, where like you have a picture, you've got your name, you've got like this opportunity to include what LinkedIn calls a headline. So like really quick snippet of like what is one of the most important things that people need to know about you. Then if you scroll down on the page, you have a chance to introduce yourself with an about section. You have a chance to list your experiences here. In the experience section, you can add your education, you should add your education, and then there's also a bunch of like bonus sections as well. So you can add licenses if you have those, volunteering, skills, recommendations. It kind of just like goes on and on. But as long as you have down to like the education section, that can be a really strong profile and tell a lot of people some good information about you if they've never met you like outside of the LinkedIn world. I do want to demo a couple of different ways that you can connect with people on LinkedIn. Physically, like, or I guess physically isn't the right word, but like actually connect with them on the platform, but also just like find them in general. Have you used the UConn alumni feature before? You want to show it?
Oh God. I'm being put on the spot.
Yes, you are.
Gosh.
You got to go to the UConn page first.
Yeah.
But I know you know how to do it.
I usually just type.
Yeah, me too.
University of Connecticut. We go to people.
It actually, the easier way to get there, if you scroll back up, is go like to the full UConn page, and then that's the button. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could, if you want to look for statistics. Oops, it'd help if I could spell. And then you could search by year of graduation. So say you want to like do, that doesn't work, 2018 to 2022. So people who have already graduated, you can kind of see a little snippet of where they work, where they live. And then there are just a ton of different people. And these are all alumni who have statistics. I believe it's like in their, somewhere in their
profile, yeah.
Somewhere in their profile. So some of these might not necessarily be like actual statistics majors, but or they might have dual. But again, these are just a bunch of different people. And I think you can also specify a little bit more too up here. So if you know you want someone that works at Pratt & Whitney, you can click on that as well. And these are all people, UConn alumni, probably statistics majors, and that work at Pratt & Whitney. So these are really great people you can connect with. And also says they're a mutual connection. So second, that's really great person too, I'd say, because you have someone in common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is such a cool feature. I think you did a great overview of it and talked about like all the mechanics of it. I could personally spend like hours like just reading through all the different people's profiles. The only thing I would add to what Claire just mentioned is like if you're intrigued by someone's position title, like let's say you want to know what a research engineer at Pratt & Whitney does, you can actually then like click on their profile and learn more about them by like reading what they have. So this person, they clarify a little bit and they say that their focus area specifically is engine design and systems integration. And that may or may not be interesting to you, but you can also see like, how did they get there? It looks like they had an internship at Lockheed Martin, which ultimately led to a job at Pratt & Whitney. So you can kind of get inspiration for questions to ask them, but also for maybe like your own career journey as well. So really, really helpful feature. If you don't want to look at UConn alumni specifically, you don't have to. You could, like, let's say you want to be like a data scientist. You can literally just go into the search bar and type in data scientist and filter your search to people. And then you can see the 1.4 million people on LinkedIn that have data scientists somewhere in their profile. And of course, you can filter it. Like if you want to see data scientists in Connecticut or at a certain company, you can do that as well. But literally, there are just like millions of people that you can connect with and network with based on what it is that you're looking for. One last quick option I'll show you is you can also search by company. So if I wanted to see people at Aetna, I can type in Aetna and go to Aetna's page on LinkedIn, and then instead of saying alumni here, like it said for UConn, it says people, and this will show me the list of 40,000 Aetna employees. And same thing, like Claire was just showing, I can, apply some filters if I want to, or I can just scroll down and see all the people that work there. So Claire's somewhere in that list. But it's a really good way to search, either by having like a UConn connection, by looking for a certain job title, or by looking for a certain company. Possibilities are endless. Any other points about LinkedIn you think are important to mention?
I think you hit most of them. There's also like groups on LinkedIn, like I know Stats is on there. That's also a really great way. You can join some, or I know I'm like a part of some for like our internship program. So that's also a really great way. Like you can connect through people through those mutual groups. See who's posted recently, post in there as well. Great way again to help build your network.
Yeah, so this is the UConn statistics page. If you want to follow along, I would recommend that. But I am really glad that Claire brought up groups in general, because groups are a really good way to find other people who have like a shared interest. So for example, if I go back and I type in data science again, just in the search bar, but instead of clicking on people to filter my results, I'm going to click on groups instead. You can see that like this is a group of 729,000 people who are passionate about big data, analytics, machine learning, data science, AI, and all these other things. Wow, there were more things than I thought. So if that's also your interest and you want to be part of those conversations, you can join that group. Same thing, like data science. Sometimes there are groups that are like affiliated with certain companies, like Claire mentioned the internship program, or groups that are affiliated with universities, etc. Those are all options that you have here. These groups also can have like affinity connections. So I'm sure that there are like women in STEM groups like you were mentioning earlier, or even like New England based groups or Connecticut based groups, lots of different variations of what you might be able to join. And one last perk I will just mention about groups that I think is so cool is if I go to one of the groups that I'm part of the UConn CLAS group. Up here in the right-hand corner, I can see a full list of members of this group. So if I click show all, and I can message any of them. So it's like a little power trip, actually. But if you join a group with people who you have that like common interest with, LinkedIn may prevent you from messaging them if you're not connected with them, which is like a kind of like a safety or a security barrier that LinkedIn puts in place. But this is a way that you can kind of get around that, which I think is pretty cool. So thanks for mentioning groups. All right, so any questions about LinkedIn or any of the search features that we just demonstrated before we move on to our last tech platform? No? All right, so really quickly, I'm just going to go back to our website to show you the last one. Like I said, the last one's called InterStride. It's a platform specifically built for international students. So in order to find it, the easiest thing to do is come to our website, go to the Affinity Communities tab, and then go to international students. And if you scroll down, it's linked right here on the kind of intro paragraph, so it's kind of hard to miss. And as the bullet point said, it supports international students with career opportunities, networking and mentorship, visa and immigration news, webinars and workshops, and other like productivity tools. I'm not going to do a full demo of it, but if I were to describe what it looks very similar to Husky Link, where it has like a bunch of different tabs, one of which is a connect tab, and you can connect with a bunch of people who either are international students, were international students, or want to hire international students, like have some sort of connection to the international student community. So if you are an international student and you're struggling with like the barriers to employment with work authorization options, this is a really, really, really helpful resource for you to check out. Okay, any other websites or tech platforms that you use for networking?
I think those are pretty much it. Again, like I'm very pro LinkedIn these days, so that's mostly what I use.
Same. LinkedIn is a good one. Like I said earlier, I could spend hours on LinkedIn. Yeah. And LinkedIn is actually how I reached out to Claire to come here today, because we mostly communicated through your UConn email address, but I was like, I don't know if she checks that anymore. So LinkedIn was the way to go. And it worked out. Okay. So we're going to move on to our last section of content for today, which is what to say. So tips for when you're actually having conversations with people who are either in your network or you're looking to grow your network. So the first slide is actually something that Claire already brought up, which I'm happy about, that we're reinforcing this multiple times. And it's the idea of having a goal. It can be really hard to feel successful in your networking efforts if you don't have a goal, because it can feel like you're just like spinning your wheels and like trying to make things happen. But if there's not something that you're specifically working towards, it can almost never feel like you're making any progress. So that's why having a goal is important. Can you repeat some of the examples of goals that you shared earlier?
Usually like I want to learn something. So like for me, when I'm talking to these directors, I want to learn kind of how they got to where they were, or any advice that they have, any projects that they've really been excited about, any challenges. So I like learning about that. Maybe you are interested in a job with them. So that could be your goal, is to get an opportunity with that or hear about their open positions. Yeah, I think learning, advice, opportunities, or maybe you just want to like start a conversation. You just want to kind of get to know them, because maybe you've heard like from other people who've told you about this person, so you just kind of want to get to know them. I think there's a bunch of different reasons to kind of connect with someone.
Yeah, agreed. And all of those are good ones. Your reasons may be those, may be different. Doesn't really matter what the reason is, just having it is a good way to set the stage for the conversation. And then coming away from that conversation, you can either say, yes, I accomplished this goal. I can kind of like check that off. Or maybe, no, I didn't accomplish this goal, so I need to think about like another networking opportunity to help me achieve that goal instead. Or maybe I need to have like another conversation with this person because we didn't get to this topic. So having a goal is very important, and your goal can be the same all the time, or it could vary depending on what you're doing. So maybe if you're currently like a junior and you're looking for a summer internship, maybe all of your networking for the next 3 months is going to be focused on getting an internship, and that's fine. But then maybe over the summer, it will shift towards learning from people at your company, like higher level managers and employees. So that's an example of how that might work. When it comes to actually like in the moment of having those conversations, you may have heard the term elevator pitch before. And this is a really, really common phrase that's kind of thrown out when it comes to having networking conversations, because it is something that you should have prepared. Sometimes the person who you're networking with will like initiate the conversation and ask you questions, and it'll just flow really nicely, but sometimes they won't. And sometimes you'll have to initiate it, and you'll have to like offer some content to like start with, and that's where an elevator pitch can really come into play. So I'm going to share what kind of the Center for Career Development recommends is having a really strong elevator pitch. But I also know that Claire, since doing like all these interviews for Aetna, CVS Aetna, has like seen a lot of sort of like elevator pitch type responses like in the interviews. So I'm curious for your view as well. Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first? Okay. So when you're like launching your elevator pitch, you should obviously have some sort of introduction about who you are and how you kind of ended up in this scenario that you're in. So maybe you might say to the person, like, this is who I am. Also, I found you through Husky Link, or I found you using the UConn alumni search feature in LinkedIn, or we're both here at this event today focused on this topic, but just kind of setting the stage of like, how did you end up in this conversation or this relationship is a good way to start. When you're talking about yourself, you want to try to not tell your entire life story. Your elevator pitch is meant to be short. The reason it's called an elevator pitch actually is because it's meant to only be the duration of an elevator ride if you ran into like your dream employer in the elevator and you only had that amount of time to talk to them and like tell them about you. So instead of telling your whole life story, you're going to want to choose like 3 to 4 skills that you would say are some of your top skills and your strengths and things that employers would really be interested in knowing about you, and kind of feature those in your elevator pitch. In addition to that, you also want to like back that up. So, you don't want to just say, I'm a really good public speaker, and then just move on, because they might, that would mean they would have to just kind of like take your word for it. So you also want to mention 2 or 3 experiences that you've had that have helped you build these skills. So it's kind of like you're providing that evidence of actually having those skills. And then my personal like favorite part of an elevator pitch is to end with a question, because if you just kind of like stop talking, it might be a little awkward. Like the person who's listening to you might not know exactly what to say, or kind of where to take the conversation. But if you ask a question, then they know exactly what to say and the conversation can kind of flow from there. So that can be a question as simple as, this is my story, tell me about yourself. Or what's your position title? Or what brought you to this event today? Like, does not have to be anything complicated. Or it could be a more targeted question, like, I have aspirations of becoming an underwriter. Can you tell me what it's like to be an underwriter at your company? Like, it could be sort of fueled by that interest as well. So no specific guidelines, but just inviting the opportunity for them to say something is a really good idea. So that's my take. What do you think?
No, I agree with like all of these. I think it's important to kind of tell a story. I've had a few people where they just kind of like read it off their resume, like, oh, I'm a stats major. I have analytical skills. I have technical skills. And that's kind of like not too exciting. It's not going to really like make that person remember you. So if you can kind of incorporate those skills with those experiences, like Lisa said, I think that kind of helps you stand out. And then asking that question, I think, is super important too. I've been to a tabling event where, like, as an employer, a student came up and gave me their pitch, and then there was just silence, and it's kind of like, okay, are you interested in the position? Are you interested in the company? And then I was kind of initiating that. So it's to see students kind of initiating that with us is really like exciting. I guess that really makes us kind of like you, because we know you know what you want, and for us seeing that, it's just kind of like, we know you're serious about coming up to us for that position, for whatever it might be. So I think those are really important.
Yeah, those are good tips. And I think those are especially good tips coming from someone who's been on the employer side, because like Claire is the exact type of person that you're going to be like interacting with. So I think you have a really good perspective. One last thing I will mention about elevator pitches before we move on is that I mentioned earlier that they should be short, and I just want to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. You probably will want to have elevator pitches, or at least ideas for elevator pitches that do kind of vary in length. So if you're meeting someone at a networking event where it's like a room full of people and you might only have like 2 minutes to talk to them, you're going to want to be really quick. Like we're talking like 30 seconds. But if you are answering an interview question, you do have a little bit more time, and you can maybe give like a 3-minute elevator pitch. So you want to kind of I guess like brainstorm what are some of the key points that you would want to include under some of these categories, and then be ready to deliver that in a variety of time increments, because you never know how much time you're going to have. Okay, we are almost to the end of our slides today. I think we have just a couple more. So continuing on the idea of like actually having conversations during networking, just a couple of additional things to keep in mind. When you are initiating a new networking relationship, it might be tempting to like just dive right into making a big ask. So if you are meeting someone who works for the company that you work for, you might be tempted to just say like, hey, can you hire me for an internship this summer? And in my experience, that tends to be a turnoff, mostly because usually the answer is no. And then things just kind of get awkward, right? Like if a student just like randomly said to you, Claire, can you hire me this summer?
I don't have that power. So
Right.
probably can't.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, well, the tone of the rest of this conversation is going to be weird. So really focusing on building a relationship first before making a big ask can make a really big difference. So if I got to know Claire for 30 minutes before asking that question, you might be able to say, to give me like a better answer. Like still the answer is no, but you might be able to say like, here are some other things you could consider. Here are some other things that you could do because you actually like know me at that point. So that relationship piece is really helpful. And I think it also ties back to one of the very first points that we made today, which is the fact that networking is like a two-way conversation, not just one. So you can also even look for ways that like you can help the person you're talking to, and that will also help with the relationship building as well. Anything to add here?
Oh, no, I think you hit on
Okay.
it.
We kind of just covered this one, so I'm going to move on, but networking relationships should be mutually beneficial. Try to help the person as much as they're helping you. You can and should share networking opportunities with your friends and classmates and people who are kind of in similar shoes as you, because it can be comforting and beneficial for you to maybe do some networking together. So, you know, if you and a friend meet at a networking event and talk to other people, that could be good networking connections for both of you. So if you are nervous for whatever reason, or if you think it would be more convenient to have a friend with you, or whatever the case is, you know, don't hesitate to do that. The one caveat I will say is don't grab a friend and go to a networking event and then only talk to each other. That is not helpful. But having each other there for support and like maybe as a person to check in with or debrief with can be really helpful. Have you ever done networking with other people?
Yeah, so like last summer we had some of our like very, very high up like vice presidents come, and a few of us went up together to kind of talk to that person. First of all, just because like time-wise, it's probably more convenient for them, but it also just made the environment a lot more relaxed because, you know, someone's so high up, it's very intimidating. So having other people there too, it also keeps the conversation going, I think, because there's multiple people to ask questions. So I think that's really helpful if you are a little bit more hesitant with those networking opportunities.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And then last but certainly not least, you really never know how quickly a networking relationship is going to progress. So even if you are making your best effort to like not make a big ask right away, the person you're talking to might turn to you and be like, actually, you know what? We have a position available. Send me your resume. So moral of the story is as you are engaging in networking opportunities, you should always have an up-to-date resume ready to go because you never know when you're going to be asked for it. And if you're asked for it, you want to be able to deliver probably within like 24 hours of getting that request if it's an opportunity that you ultimately want to pursue. So if you don't have an updated resume, that's a good kind of early step before you really like enter into the world of networking. And then to round us out, something that's really important to end on is gratitude. So whenever somebody in your network does something for you or supports you, it is really important to say thank you. Not only because that is kind of like an expectation, like if someone helps you, you should thank them, but also it in turn will likely make them want to help you again in the future. Whereas if you don't say thank you, that's likely not going to be the case. So saying thank you can like look, you know, a wide variety of ways. It's just something that should be done. What are some ways that you've said thank you in the past?
Oh, every time I close out a conversation, I'll say it. And then sometimes I'll send an email saying, thank you again for meeting with me. I really appreciated it. and like give them some contact information because maybe they want to contact me. So just kind of doing that, it only takes like 2 minutes. So, but it means a lot to them because you never know who you're going to be talking to again in the future. So that's a really good way to keep that connection going.
Yeah. Have you, like being on the employer side of things, have you seen like good thank yous from students and also maybe bad thank yous from students?
I can't say I've seen a bad thank you because I think any thank you is like a good one, I guess. They're saying thank you, but I have seen a few students that like after I've talked to them event, they've reached out and said thank you, and that just like makes me feel a little bit more, not appreciated, but like I like to see that because it shows that they were interested in talking to you and they actually got something out of it. So it just puts you in like a little bit better mood when you think of that person, I guess.
Yeah, which can carry a lot of weight if you like were in a hiring position. So good,
Yeah, for sure.
good to know. Yeah. All right, so I think that is the end of our formal content slides. Yep, so this is our final slide here today. Our contact info is up here. If you do want to reach out or have questions, I'll move the chat so that you can see all of it. So does anybody have any questions about anything that we did cover or maybe anything that we didn't cover regarding networking and related topics? Yes.
Or academic relations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the question was just for those of you who weren't able to hear, or those of you virtual, was like, can you also use LinkedIn or a similar platform to network in like an academic capacity? Like if you're looking for academic or research related positions, internships, and the short answer is yes. Those people in academia and research are often on LinkedIn as well. There are some industries where it's not as common, but I wouldn't say that academia is one of those. So same search features that we were using earlier, I would just recommend typing in different terms like maybe postdoc or research or a more nuanced topic within your field, and you will be able to find very similar results. And same thing too, if any of you are considering fields like outside of maybe like direct statistics or data science, you could type in like economics or underwriting or any career that you're interested in and hopefully find similar results as well. All right. Any closing thoughts from you?
I mean, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. You can build your network, but I think networking, I know when I was a student, it was kind of intimidating, like I said earlier, but I think it's definitely beneficial for getting into the world professionally. It's a really great way to kind of build your professional development and just really great resource. So highly recommend. It's never too early to start, so definitely recommend getting started as soon as you can.
Yeah, I second all of that. And I would just say my closing thing to keep in mind is that these types of conversations and like efforts are what our office is here for. So come to the Center for Career Development and we can have one-on-one conversations about like your specific networking goals and how you can make those happen. Because I know today we focused like pretty broadly on networking because it's more of a group setting, but we can provide that individualized advice if that's something that you're looking for. So keep us in mind for any future questions that might come up. But yeah, I think that's everything. So we'll hang out up here for a few minutes if anybody has any other questions. But if not, thanks for joining us this evening. And we hope that you learned some stuff about networking. Thanks. Stopping recording.
Okay.